In a deep pit, a woman suddenly took off her pants. The man standing nearby was stunned, but without saying a word, he stepped forward, quickly removed his own pants, and even stripped the clothes off another man who had fallen into the pit and died. Then he went to a nearby puddle filled with muddy water and soaked all the clothes completely. Once the clothes were drenched, he picked up 2 thick sticks from a pile of wood and tightly tied them together using a belt. He then wrapped the wet clothes around the sticks and secured them firmly. After everything was ready, he looked up at the 5-meter-high wall in front of him. He hurled the stick contraption upwards, but it slipped and nearly struck him on the head as it fell back. But he didn't give up. Gritting his teeth, he tried again with all his strength. This time, the ends of the stick got caught on either side of the pit's edge. He quickly pulled the clothes to check if everything was stable. The woman said, "Let me go first, I'm lighter than you," but due to her injuries, he refused. He placed 1 foot on the wall and started climbing. The wall was slippery and tough to scale, and the stick above began to bend under pressure. He climbed faster, using all his strength. He was just about to reach the top when his foot slipped and slammed hard against the wall. The pain was so intense that he screamed and barely managed to hang on to the clothes. The pain soon forced him to fall, and he screamed in agony on the ground. The woman rushed to him, but what she saw made her gasp. There was a deep, open wound on his knee. The situation was now critical. Without wasting a moment, the woman tore a piece of cloth from the wrapped clothes, soaked it in water, and pressed it against his wound. But instead of easing the pain, it made things worse. Blood continued pouring from the wound, and the woman started panicking. She didn't know what to do, frozen in shock. Then things took a turn for the worse. As she was dressing his wound, raindrops began to fall from the sky. Slowly, the rain picked up speed, and the pit began to fill with water. The woman panicked. She didn't know how to swim. Terrified, she felt like she might drown in the pit. But the man stretched out his arms and laughed loudly. He wasn't afraid of the rain. He took the woman to a raised corner of the pit and sat with her, calmly waiting. The water level slowly rose. Concerned that the woman couldn't swim, the man pointed to a branch hanging from a tree, signaling her to hold on to it. But just then, the woman slipped and fell hard into the water. She flailed wildly, struggling not to drown. Seeing this, the man leapt into the water without hesitation. He reached her with great difficulty and held onto her tightly. Both were now submerged waist-deep in water. Their only hope was that if the water level rose just a little more, they might be able to float to the top. But fate had other plans. The rain stopped just as suddenly as it had started. The man looked up at the sky in disappointment. Still, he didn't give up. He comforted the woman, saying, "The rain will return. We just need to wait a little longer. We will get out of here." But the more they waited, the more disappointed they became. The rain never returned, and the water slowly began to evaporate. Now things took a darker turn. The man's wound, having stayed in dirty water for too long, got infected. Dark patches formed around his eyes, giving him a haunting appearance. The woman grew frightened, but true horror began when the man's behavior changed completely. He knelt down and began drinking the filthy water like a madman. Then he started digging through the water with his hands and eating whatever he found, like an animal. The woman was terrified. She slowly backed away and nervously called his name. But when the man slowly turned his head to face her, her eyes widened in shock. She froze. He was holding a half-eaten slimy frog, and the strangest part, he didn't find it disgusting at all. Smiling eerily, he said to her, "Look, it's a fish. You should eat too." He kept offering it to her. The woman was so disgusted she couldn't control herself and started vomiting. Despite that, she asked him with concern, "Are you okay?" Just then, it started raining again. Strangely, the moment raindrops hit his face, his eyes lit up, like he had snapped out of it. He vomited the frog immediately. The woman's eyes filled with hope again. The rain was now pouring down, and the pit began to fill quickly. If all went well, in just an hour, they could float to the top. But just when joy had returned to the woman's face, the man suddenly started convulsing. His whole body trembled, and he collapsed into the water. Panicked, the woman rushed to him and held him in her arms. She realized how bad his condition was. His wound was badly infected. He had a high fever, splitting headache, and foam began forming at his mouth. Things were now extremely serious. The woman didn't know what to do, but the good news was, the man's will to live was stronger than the disease. He gathered himself and stood at a spot where the rising water could help them climb out. Soon, the water reached their chests. The time had come. With his left hand, the man held the woman tightly. With his right hand, he grabbed the tree branch and tried to climb, but with only one hand, it was impossible to lift both of them. So reluctantly, he let go of her and used both hands to climb. Just then, the branch snapped, and they both fell hard into the water. Luckily, The man was a strong swimmer. He immediately pulled the woman out. Disaster was avoided. This failure still didn't break the man's spirit. He took the woman to another side of the pit, where a tree root jutted out from the wall. He gripped it tightly and tried to climb. But suddenly, pain shot through his head, and he began banging it against the wall. The woman couldn't take it anymore. She pulled him into the water, hoping the cold would calm his mind. It worked. The man regained his senses. But now, the rain began to stop, and the water level dropped quickly. If they didn't act now, this might be their last chance. Seeing how critical things were, the man made a big decision. He bent down and turned himself into a human ladder. He said to the woman, "You go first." She stepped onto his hands and shoulders, grabbing hold of roots on the wall and slowly climbing up. Finally, she grabbed the edge of the pit and pulled herself out. She was free, but in her relief, she didn't notice. The man had now sunk into the deep water. Then she heard a faint scream. She turned back and looked down, but it was too late. Only bubbles rose from the filthy water. The man was nowhere to be seen. She knelt at the edge of the pit and cried. Her heart was shattered. She hoped he'd still rise out of the water. Maybe he was just submerged. But as the water stilled, so did her hope. Now she was left alone, carrying the burden of his sacrifice and walking the lonely road of survival. If you liked this emotional survival story, don't forget to like and leave a comment. Thanks for watching from the bottom of the heart.